And now joining me for an exclusive interview on Russia's shortcomings, the current situation of Ukraine when it comes to continuous attacks and domestic tensions, it is my pleasure to welcome my guest, Bohdan Nahaylo, editor-in-chief of Kyiv Post, here on the program. Bohdan, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you back.
Great. Good evening from Kyiv.
So, as we look at what's happening with Russia, a new wave of fuel shortages is spreading across the country. We have 10 regions that are currently being affected. Where are these continuous long-range sanctions putting Russian economy as of now, as of today?
They're damaging the economy, not as much as we would hope. The EU is signaling that even more severe sanctions are possibly in the pipeline. But I think the most important thing is that the damage being done by long-range Ukrainian strikes into Russia, this is having even more effect on the Russian economy, on its energy supplies, on its petrol supplies, on morale, on psychology.
Mm-hmm. So is there a chance with the shortages in Russia and how the economy is shaping up for Moscow to actually have to finally reconsider options other than continuing the war in Ukraine?
There's no sign of that. The latest statements from Putin and reinforced a few days ago by Lavrov is that they're not interested in a peace deal or even a suspension of hostilities, a ceasefire. The latest statement from Lavrov a few days ago was that we will fight until we achieve what we set out to achieve, which at the minimum is all of eastern Ukraine and all of the Donbass, Crimea, etc. And obviously trying to force the West to impose on Ukraine the kind of neutralization of Ukraine, no NATO, possibly no EU, though there is some flexibility on the EU issue, at least on paper.
Mm-hmm. Come winter, if Ukraine continues the attacks on refineries and this crisis within Russia deepens, could parts of Russia experience a cold and harsh winter just like the one that Russia caused Kyiv last winter? What do you think?
Yes, exactly. Russia doesn't seem to publicly take this into account. As Lavrov emphasized, this is going to be a particularly harsh winter for Ukraine because Russia is going to impose those hardships with its continuous long-range, not so much now Shahed attacks, drone attacks, but the incessant now ballistic missile attacks, which are so much harder to shoot down, to control, to respond to in good time. But then Ukraine is also well advanced in making its own ballistic long-range missiles. And now we are waiting to see how long that might take, whether it will take months and be ready by the end of the year, or whether we can expect this in the early part of 2027.
Mm-hmm. As we're now finding out, Russia might free up troops from border regions to bolster intense frontline sectors by replacing them with North Korean troops. Is Russia having a greater problem providing troops for the frontline that it was previously anticipated? Or could this be a signal that Moscow is preparing for something bigger, perhaps somewhere else?
No, I don't think it's that they are in a state to prepare for something bigger. They are, of course, considering a fuller mobilization after the Duma elections shortly in the next weeks. Of course, they need the manpower, and if North Korea is willing to provide that, they will, of course, take that and pay for it. But the fact that they are preparing to withdraw troops from other border regions shows that there is a very drastic, dramatic shortage of manpower, let's call it cannon fodder, on the front lines. And according to not only Ukrainian sources, but Western, the Russians are losing up to 1,500 men a day. So think about that on a constant basis, this cannon fodder. They seem to have changed tactics in the last few days. Instead of mass assaults, they are now trying to break through Ukrainian lines with groups of 3 or 4 fighters to make it more difficult for Ukrainians to spot them, both with drones and on the ground. So this suggests that they have run into serious problems in making advances on the front lines. But they think in Moscow that if they keep pounding away with their missiles, that this will weaken the resolve of the Ukrainians to fight back, and it's not. And it will weaken the resolve of those countries that support Ukraine to support and to keep supporting it, speed up support, in the sense that they will say, well, it's hopeless. How can we compete with Russia's never-ending supply of rockets, missiles, including those coming from North Korea, and tacitly with parts coming from China and other countries.
Just before we go, Bohdan, former Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov told CBS during an interview, CBS News on August 16th, that Ukraine could be capable of using domestically produced ballistic missiles to strike targets inside Russia within the next 3 to 6 months. Is that a realistic prospect? What about the execution of creating them? We've heard from the U.S. administration saying in order to be able to create and to make Patriot missiles, it would take months to be able to put certain backing into force.
The Ukrainians were underestimated a year ago, 2 years ago, and nobody expected that they would take the initiative and create the kinds of drones and long-range drones. So everything is possible. On the other hand, it is possible that the official media is playing up speeding up this process for purposes of morale and to look good. But let me just add that the Fyodorov case is very important. I witnessed the mass demonstration here in Kyiv by thousands of young people, and tomorrow is a very important day in Ukraine because the parliament is supposed to decide who the new Minister of Defense will be. Will Zelensky give in at the last minute to the protesters, or will he impose somebody else? And the current candidate is a military general, and the constitution forbids military personnel taking this position. So tomorrow is a very important day for not only Zelensky and the young people, but for democracy and the parliamentarianism in this country.
Thank you so much, Bohdan, for joining me. Bohdan Nahaylo, editor-in-chief of Kyiv Post, was my guest tonight. Thanks again.
Thank you.
And so this would be all the latest news for now. Thank you so much for joining, but I hope to see you back here on TVP World for more news and features. But until then, have a good one.